invite you now to join me in the spirit of prayer and meditation. And our words today come from contemporary California poet Rosemary Watola Trauma. There are so many boundaries in me, so many limitations, prisons, places where a line has been drawn, perhaps by another, perhaps by me. The line says, stop. The line says, don't be curious. They say, make yourself small, smaller. But imagination is the big pink eraser that rubs out the lines, smears and disappears them. Sometimes it's more like a tear, a rip in the unknown that bids me to look through the lines, as if peeking through a curtain. And sometimes the imagination takes a line and bends it, twists it, like a clown with a balloon, until what I thought was a boundary becomes a bird, becomes a crown, becomes a flower. Or it turns the line perpendicular. So what I thought was a deadline becomes a path. I want to listen to the voices beyond the boundaries. I want to be open to what I can't yet see. I want to hear the welcome of the horizon. And like a bell calling me home, let it lead me. I invite you to join me in a time of silence.
Our common greeting today is Happy Mother's Day. But for some, this day is not happy. And I want to take a moment this morning to honor those for whom this day is complicated or painful. There was a time when I wanted a baby so badly, the longing and need was deep and powerful. After infertility treatments and 2 miscarriages, I truly thought I would never have children. When I finally did become a mother, it was so much harder than I ever imagined. Sleepless nights, little humans who needed me every second, the feeling of my own self slipping away. When my kids were little, the best Mother's Day gift was a day without my children. And then there was the constant pressure to be the kind of mother society expected me to be. And I still wrestle with that, and my children are 20 and 22. Then there's my own mother, a complicated person with whom I'm no longer in contact. And I'm lucky to have a stepmother who has been just as much a mother to me as anyone, although we share no genetic connection, and an aunt who shows up for me in ways a mother does. There is so much more to mothering than just giving birth. So let's not take Mother's Day for granted. Today, I hold in my heart not only those who fit the traditional role of mother, but also those who long to be mothers, those who have lost their mothers, and those who mother in all kinds of non-traditional ways. May your day be full of love and support for all that you are and all that you do. Thank you.
Thank you, Liz. Let's not take Mother's Day for granted or simplify the role of mothers. There's a complexity to the social expectations of mothers, whether parenting your birth child or mothering a young person you care and responsible for. Because that task is one of the hardest things any of us will ever do. And of course, the societal pressure on women makes it so much harder. In the song we just sang, Que Sera Sera, it says, whatever will be, the future's not ours to see. Well, that really talks about the limits of imagination. The future may not be ours to see, but we all spend so much time imagining what our future's going to be. Whether it's like Liz, the future of being a parent. I was lucky, I had no expectations of being a parent. And that was probably healthy because I wasn't disappointed. But I know for my partner, Natalie, it's been hard. She said if anyone read the job description for being a parent, no one would ever apply for the job. But imagination is important because sometimes it allows us to play into the future and let us play what we would like to be. And often we may be transcending our past. I read an incredibly sad story this week. It was about how we train baby elephants. I don't know if you've ever read about it, but what they do is they get baby elephants when they're young. They put a stake in the ground and a 12-foot chain and tie it round their leg. And they don't allow it to move beyond that 12-foot radius until they're fully grown, 30 times the size. And then they undo the chain. But the baby elephants don't, fully grown elephants don't move beyond that 12-foot radius unless led by the human leader. And that's a devastating story to think about. Even when the chain is removed, they won't move beyond that 12-foot radius. And I think we are all bound by invisible chains. They come from unexamining our limited beliefs and narratives that we tell about ourselves, that perhaps have been told to us by our family, by our religious organization, by society, and the unrealistic expectations they have in all of us, but perhaps especially for mothers. So I invite you to think, what is the limiting belief that you have about yourself, about this religious organization, about Unitarian Universalism? What limiting beliefs? And how can we use our imagination to transcend that belief? I know the limitations I have for myself come from my mother. And my mother was a wonderful mother. I loved her dearly, and I know she loved me more than anything in the world, me and my brother. The things she said, I still tell myself and play out. And my brother and I talk about this. My brother's 5 years older, and he was the artist and I was the smart one. Well, he became a very successful oil executive career for BP, and I'm a minister, so I'm not sure who's successful and who's smart in that combination. But we both have talk about it. We have limited ourselves by that, what my mum said to us. And you know what? There was so much good she did, and yet that still plays out, and that's one of the change in the stake in the ground I have. My brother's the artist. And I think if we all look at it, we all have these messages. Perhaps it's from our father, perhaps it's from our mother, perhaps it's from siblings, perhaps it's from others who were involved in raising us. So I invite you to think, what are the stakes in the ground that you are still chained to because of others' expectations? I think when we look, we all have them, and the way we can transcend them is through imagination. And the great Christian writer G.K. Chesterton said, "Fairy tales are more than true, not because they tell us that dragons exist, because they tell us that dragons can be beaten." Not that dragons exist, but they tell us that dragons can be beaten. And I always think of those old maps where you see, and when they got into areas that they didn't know, they say, "There be monsters." What are the monsters that are limiting us? And how can we use the imagination to transcend that? To not see it as a boundary, but see it as a horizon that we may not know what's beyond it, but we're going to move towards, not limited by that stake and those invisible chains that have conditioned us not to think that we deserve to move beyond that boundary to a horizon unseen but yearned for by each of us.